How do you interact with an angry woman when you're going through a divorce? We all know that anger is not particularly helpful in the divorce process, right? Because if you're angry, you're going to fight, fight, fight. You're probably not going to accept a reasonable, logical settlement. It's more likely to drag the divorce out, cost a lot of money in lawyers, and in some cases end up in court, where a lot of people's names tend to get dragged through the mud in front of children and family members, and it's just pretty bad for everyone. So if your soon-to-be ex-wife is angry and you're in the legal process, how do you interact with her in the most effective way to calm her anger down and reach an amicable agreement? A client recently asked me this question. It was somebody who's going through my Better Be Undivorced course and in the Better Be Undivorced community. And it's really important to explore this. And the answer is going to be hard for some of you. Because most of you who are drawn to this channel think a lot like I do. You are logical, you are reasonable, and you want to think things through in a logical, reasonable fashion. And so your gut instinct in dealing with your angry, soon-to-be ex is probably to have a rational conversation with her. To be like, hey, look, if you really keep pushing things the way you're pushing them, it's not going to end well. Like, this might end up in court. That would be really hard on the kids. And already this fighting we're doing is really hard on the kids. And can't we just talk about this and look, here are the assets. And, if we split them this way, everything is really fair and nobody has to get hurt. And we're going to save so much money on legal fees. And wouldn't you rather have that money than, right? You want to go and have the rational conversation with her. And I don't blame you. That seems like the rational thing to do. And maybe you've already tried it. If you have, how did it go? I would love to hear from you in the comments. If you have a soon-to-be ex who is pissed off, mad at you, fighting legally, and you tried to have a rational conversation with her, what happened? Usually they don't go that well. If yours worked, please comment. But usually they don't go that well. Usually when somebody is angry and you try to rationalize with them, what they are experiencing is that you're telling them not to be angry. You're telling them, calm down and see this rationally. And then they get pissed. They're like, I have every right to be mad at you, you bastard. And so the anger amps up instead of calming down. And now, when I had this conversation with my client in the Better Be Undivorced course and community, he had already done a lot of work with his own anger. I'm going to assume that maybe you haven't spent that much time with your own anger. So we're going to talk about this, and I'm going to try to talk about it in a helpful way, because some of you are going to hear me talking about this and you're going to say, well, women are crazy and they can't listen to reason and they need to just calm down and stop being so freaking angry. But I would challenge you to spend some time with your own anger. If you want to understand how to effectively interact with another person, and especially how to diffuse conflict with another person, you have the best practice ground right inside of you. Because what works on your strong emotions will work with other people. So what that means is that if I have anger inside myself, what do? A lot of times, people try to suppress it. They're like, well, I shouldn't be angry. I don't want to be angry. Anger is not helping me right now. I need to look at this rationally. So we're like, anger, shut up, go away. I don't want to hear it. I'm going to deal with this logically. Does that work on yourself? No. Right? It might work for a minute. Sometimes it works for a little while. If you're really good at suppressing, you can keep it up for a few days or weeks even. But eventually the anger comes to the surface and it overflows. And then it's usually so bottled up that it's pretty explosive and even violent. So suppressing our own anger doesn't turn the volume down. How about arguing with it? If I'm angry and I'm like, okay, I shouldn't be angry. I don't want to be angry. There's a better way to look at this. I think I can deal with it rationally. Usually what happens is this other little angry voice in my head is like, yeah, but she's such a bitch and I can't believe, and she needs to just see things differently. I end up with this internal conflict where I'm basically arguing with myself inside my head. And one part of me is like, yeah, let's just look at this calmly and see it really clearly. And the other part is like, no, she's horrible and this isn't right. And so now this back and forth is going on in my own head and I'm exhausted and stressed out and I haven't even talked to anybody else yet. Right? So if you start paying attention to how you interact with your own anger, you're going to learn a lot about how to interact with hers. Because I'll tell you how I work with a client who's experiencing anger. Because trust me, most of my clients are angry, right? They're going through a divorce they didn't want. Of course, they're angry. So how do we deal with that anger? Well, the first thing I ask them to do is acknowledge it. I know it sounds simple. It's massively important. Try it. If you can do this with anger or any other emotion. When you feel it, just stop and notice it. Oh, I'm angry. And you can even imagine just saying to yourself, I see you, anger. I feel you. It is amazing. This will do one of two things. Either the anger will start to tune down just a little bit as soon as you say, I see you, or it'll like blow up. If it blows up and gets stronger, that's a sure sign that you've been suppressing your anger and it has an awful lot to say. So acknowledge your anger. The second step is to allow it to be there. So usually what do we do with anger? We're like, oh shit, I'm angry. I shouldn't be angry. Angry's not healthy. Angry's not helpful. Other people don't like it when I'm angry. Stop being angry. And then it boils in the background, eventually overflows, all of those things. So we allow it. Oh, I'm angry. Okay. It's okay to be angry. I'm allowed to be angry. It's not wrong for me to be angry. This is a normal, natural human emotion. So, okay, hi, anger. You can be there. Acknowledge it. Allow it. Just one more step. Really, just one more. The next step is to listen to your anger without trying to fix anything. So if I'm working with a client, I'll ask them to recognize the anger. Okay, I see it. I'm angry. All right, can I allow it to be there? Yes. All right, if the anger could talk, what would it say? And usually it has a lot to say. So let that voice, the one you usually argue with, the angry part of you, just let it talk for a little bit and just listen. And don't try to solve it. And when it's done talking, just say, okay, what else? Let it keep talking. You will be amazed if you do just those 3 steps. Acknowledge it, allow it to be there, and then shut up and let it talk. The anger inside of you will subside significantly. This is what's really, really cool about anger. Anger is just a signal to us. It's like any other sensation. It's like hunger, it's like thirst. It's telling us what's going on. It's telling us about something that's happening. If we don't listen, it builds up and builds up. If we listen, we got the message. Now the conscious mind can deal with it and the anger isn't needed anymore. So we don't actually have to take action. We don't have to hit a punching bag. We don't have to yell at somebody. We don't have to freak out. We just have to let the anger tell us what's going on, listen, and the anger will subside. Okay? And so I'm sharing all of this background because what works on your anger inside of yourself also works on other people's anger. So what I told my client was when he's interacting with his soon-to-be ex-wife, he needs to treat her anger the same way he treats his own, right? So instead of trying to rationalize with her, he needs to acknowledge, allow, and listen, right? So think about what happens when he tries to rationalize with her and he's like, look, I really wish you would just calm down and let's talk about this calmly and do what's best for the kids. Sounds reasonable, right? But what's happening? Well, he acknowledged that she's angry, right? He's like, you need to calm down. So he sees she's upset. You're really upset. You need to calm down. But he didn't allow it. He said, you need to stop being angry. And we know that that just doesn't work. I wish it did. If emotions were that easy to turn off, we would all just turn them off, calm our nervous systems. It doesn't work to just tell yourself to stop feeling something. So when you tell someone else to stop feeling something, they can't, and they get mad at you because it feels like you're rejecting them and it feels like you're judging them, and they're already angry, so it's really easy to just turn that anger onto you now. So instead of rationalizing and saying, hey, calm down, let's talk about this, do what's best for the kids, what he can say instead is, hey, I see that you're really upset. That's okay. I'm here. I'd like to hear more about it. Can you tell me what that's like for you? Right, so now he's acknowledging it, he's allowing it, and he's listening. The key is to listen without trying to fix, because she's probably going to have all kinds of stuff she's going to say to you about how this is unfair and that is unfair and she needs this much money and you were such an asshole and you did these things and that's why she deserves and da 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 da. And you're going to want to defend yourself and you're going to want to tell her why she's wrong and you're going to want to offer a solution. But we know from working with our own anger that that doesn't work so great. So instead, just listen. Just listen. Don't fix it. And if she stops talking, just say, okay, what else? And let her keep going. The anger will start to subside. If you acknowledge, allow, and listen without fixing anger, it starts to subside. Now, when you're doing this with yourself, you can stay with it. When you're doing this with another person, particularly a soon-to-be ex-wife, it's a lot harder. And honestly, it might not always work because there's a couple of other things going on. One, she might not want to talk to you, right? She might not want to share anything that she's feeling. And so she might go away and stay in that anger. But the bigger thing and the big issue that I see is that she might not trust you. Right? You're showing up in a way you've never shown up. How long have you been married? 10 years? 20? 40? Have you ever said, hey, honey, I see you're really angry and I'm here and I want to know what that's like for you? Probably not, right? So this is new. People don't trust what's new. And worse than that, a lot of couples get caught in this cycle where they're always looking for who's the winner. This is especially true if there's a lot of conflict or arguments in your marriage. One person always comes out on top, or you're always looking to see who's going to win the argument, who's going to come out on top, who's the loser. And so now you're getting divorced and it's just like a really big, really important version of that same argument. So if you're in a cycle with your soon-to-be ex-wife where you're both always looking for like who's winning and who's losing, she's going to see this as a tactic. She's not going to trust you because you're on the other side. And she's going to see this as you trying to manipulate her in some way. And so this is what happens, and it's really unfortunate for a lot of men that they do a lot of work to heal some of their own toxic or negative or hurtful, unhelpful patterns that they've been carrying from childhood that they didn't even know they had. Right? So they do this internal awareness work. Maybe they work through my Better Beyond Divorce course or join the community. Maybe they do it elsewhere or in therapy. And they learn to deal with their emotions differently. And so they learn to communicate differently. And they start doing things like acknowledging, allowing, and listening to their ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife's anger. But because that's new, and she only knows this cycle, this negative cycle of everyone always trying to get the upper hand in the relationship, she doesn't trust it. She thinks it's another tactic. And so this is maybe the hardest thing to accept. And this was a conversation I had to have with my client was, look, like in terms of interacting with an angry woman, this will work better than rationalizing. Right? You're giving her an opportunity to be seen, be heard. Those things will calm her nervous system and help her feel safer. But depending on the history between you, this might not work either. Right? The end of the day, the reality might be that you can't diffuse her anger, that you can't change how she feels. This is really, really hard to accept. But if you could control her emotions, this divorce wouldn't be happening. Right? We cannot control what other people feel. We can offer a safe place for their nervous system. That's what this is doing, the acknowledging, allowing, and listening without fixing. That's creating emotional safety. They can step into that and be there with us, but they don't have to. We can't make them, right? And so there is an element here. If you have a soon-to-be ex who's really angry and you're going through the legal process, you may find that you have to accept that you can't control how she's feeling, what she's doing, or how she approaches this. Approaching her in this way, this acknowledging, allowing, and listening way, gives you an opportunity. It's an invitation for her to calm down and meet you there. It is not a sure thing. It is not, again, we can't force somebody else to see or hear or meet us where we are. But I can tell you that trying to speak to her rationally will likely backfire. It usually does. And it's because it is the opposite of allowing the emotion. And emotions do not subside until we allow them and move through them. When we reject them and push them away, they just go into the background and get stronger and stronger and stronger and come out in really aggressive ways. So as good as rationalizing seems, what it's actually doing is rejecting the emotion. And it doesn't matter if you're trying to rationalize to yourself or trying to rationalize to another person. It's experienced as rejection. And when it's internal, this is why so many people feel like a split between what they think and how they feel. They'll tell me, well, my rational brain knows that I need to do X, Y, and Z, and then it'll be, but emotionally, I can't deal with it, right? Emotionally, I'm overwhelmed or I'm terrified. And I don't even know why, because there's nothing to be afraid of and it's going to be okay, but I can't handle the anxiety so strong. It's because the rational brain is not the answer to the emotional brain. You can't rationalize away the emotion because the emotion is already there. You have to acknowledge it, allow it, listen to it, and you can move through the emotions in that way. And then you can be rational. But if you try to rationalize your way out of an emotion, yours or someone else's, you're not going to get very far. And you run the risk of making that emotion, especially anger, a lot stronger because it feels like a rejection. Right? When you tell me, hey, you're angry, you need to calm down, and I'm already angry, like that feels like a rejection. So I would encourage you to explore anger in yourself first. I know you have some, especially if you're going through an unwanted divorce, especially if she's angry and there are legal consequences. There's anger in you too. So spend some time with it and notice what happens. What happens if you try to rationalize your own anger? Does it go away? Does it fix it? What happens if you acknowledge it and allow it and listen to it? Does it subside then? Right? Start to get curious about what works on you when you're angry. And then you can start to apply that to your ex-wife. You can start to apply it to your kids and to other areas of conflict where they come up in your life. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into emotional regulation and learn how to really effectively diffuse and move through even the most intense and painful emotions, then watch my free masterclass. It's called How to Take Back Control of Your Life After Divorce. The link is in the video description below, and it will give you a really powerful strategy that's really effective for dealing with intense emotions so that you can get through them without getting stuck or like stifling them where they boil over later. All right, thanks for joining me for this episode. I'll see you guys in the next one.